Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Australia once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel quite a few times before. Now, these guys are another relatively new addition to their local beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves over the last couple of years, and they're a brewery that are quite new to me personally, and I've really enjoyed trying different beers from these guys over the last year or so. But if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're best known for the different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, but also for their fruity, juicy, smoothie, Nordic, whatever we're going to call them, sour beers. Those ones are really good. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't tried from this brewery before, one that they don't produce all that often, I think, either, but it's a style that I very much enjoy, one that is enjoying a little bit of a renewed popularity in recent times, I would say, as well. And I think this one is going to be really interesting because it's a wee bit of a kind of nostalgia kick almost. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head down to Australia. We're going to go to the state of New South Wales, the city of Sydney, and then to be specific, the district of Botany. And that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful One Drop Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Liquid Cascade. It comes in at 6.8% ABV. It's a West Coast IPA, and as the name suggests, this one is single hopped with Cascade. Lots of different types of Cascade actually, which should make it very interesting. But as you might happen to know, Cascade is the kind of original high alpha acid hop from the Pacific Northwest, Yakima Valley and all this kind of thing. And yeah, this is a beer that I picked up at Wine Rack in Chimshatui in Kowloon here in Hong Kong. And yeah, when I saw this one and kind of read exactly what it was, I just couldn't resist, because it kind of reminds me of one of my favourite beers from back home in Scotland a little bit, the Schiehallion from Harveston Brewery. It's a Czech Pilsner with only American Cascade in it. And of course, you're going back to things like Sierra Nevada Pale Ale and stuff like that, which are some of the OG beers that I reviewed on the channel. And it's very rare to find a kind of more modern brewery, if you like, actually doing something like this these days as a new beer. So yeah, that was the main reason that I wanted to try this one. I thought this could be a really interesting review. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from One Drop Brewing Company before, and we will definitely add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Australian playlist along with a number of other things, and that's being added to very regularly, of course, because we do get a good selection of Aussie beer here in Hong Kong. And do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. If you are specifically interested in Australian craft beer, make sure you check out my friend Sam Smalley over at Short and Stout Beer Reviews. I'll tag him in the video description below. So go and give him a little bit of love, a subscribe, watch his beer reviews. Really nice dude, and hopefully he'll feature on some out and about videos on the channel at some point in the future. Keep your eyes peeled for those. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about One Drop Brewing once again then. So One Drop Brewing, as I mentioned to you already, are based in the Botany area of Sydney, very close to the airport. But they were founded back in mid-2016, although they didn't open their doors to the public for another few years until 2019. And the four people behind this company are Clay Grant, Meg Barbitz, Nick Calderscoles, and Liam Quinn. So Clay has a background in food catering, and he shared the idea with Meg, his wife, that he wanted to start a brewery, and she was very supportive of this, and she'd worked with tech startups and liked the idea of them having their own startup company together. So Nick is originally from New Zealand, and he was the original head brewer at Garden Brewery in Zagreb, which is a very cool place. Do go check it out. Check out my Out and About video I did there as well. But this was where he met Meg and Clay, who were on holiday visiting Meg's family. But Liam is Nick's best friend and was in the army, but also had a lot of experience in the hospitality sector as well. But Clay and Meg founded the company officially in mid-2016, and at this point they designed the branding and started planning the company and its facility and all of this. And they actually sold their house to fund the company, but they also decided to use a small portion of the money to go and visit Croatia to see Meg's family. And it was there, of course, that they met Nick, who would join the venture in 2018. But the idea behind the name One Drop was that they said a single idea or action could change the course of everything. That going to Croatia for that trip was how they met Nick, of course, so that's one thing. And then, of course, this idea of founding a brewery was what changed the direction of their lives. But the brewery itself is located in an old paper mill, and they source their brewing equipment from the Canadian company DME. This includes a 12 hectolitre brew kit, 6 24 hectolitre fermentation vessels, and I believe they've expanded this quite a bit over the last few years. They've also got a canning line there from East Coast Canning in the US, and over the last few years they've continued to build up a very strong reputation and build up their sales and stuff like this. They are, of course, known for their New England hazy IPAs, but also for their big fruity, juicy, smoothie, Nordic, whatever we're going to call them, sour beers. They do a number of pastry stouts and things like that as well. I've reviewed one of those on the channel for you before, but yeah, I have to say I prefer the hazies and the smoothie sours from these guys more than anything else. But as of September 2024, at the time of filming this video, they've produced 415 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase. These guys are pretty damn prolific in what they do, I have to say. But that is everything I can really tell you about One Drop Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself then. So artwork on the can on this one is pretty simple, but we've seen this kind of thing from One Drop Brewing before. I think it's pretty effective. But there you can see the One Drop Brewing Company symbol at the top there. Plain silver top on the can there as well. This is a 440 milliliter can, incidentally, and it tells you a wee bit about the beer just on the back here too. So it says Liquid Cascade, the 13th dip into our liquid series, the complete saturation of a single hop we know and love, Cascade, a new school West Coast IPA utilising every Cascade hop and product we could find on the market. Paying homage to the true OG West Coast hop, we've brought it back into the modern age through the use of US, Australian and New Zealand Cascade T90 hop pellets, along with Cascade Cryo hops, GMA Cascade CO2 extract, Beta Heavy Cascade Salvo, Cascade Hop Keef, Cascade Top Note, Cascade Spectrum, Hop Burst Cascade TNS, and the new Abstracts Cascade Hop Terpenes. Heaps of Cascade, get it? This is an absolute hot bomb with a solid bitterness to back it all up. So yeah, this is going to be really interesting. I didn't know the Australians were growing Cascade on a big scale as well, although in fairness, the hop farm near where I lived in Sweden was growing some Cascade. So yeah, in some ways a bit surprised, some ways not so surprised. But yeah, this one, 6.8% West Coast IPA with a shitload of Cascade in it, basically. What's not to like about that? So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see how we go. The Liquid Cascade from One Drop Brewing in Botany, Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Let's do it. This is going to be really interesting though. I couldn't resist this one when I saw it actually. So there we go. That is going to be nice. That is going to be pretty nice. That looks great. I mean, we've got maybe 80% of the beer out and into the glass at this point, but you can see that it's poured with a finger and a half of, I would say, a kind of soapy cream coloured head there. That looks really, really nice. So you can see this one has, that head's going to fade away, of course, to leave a thinner, more foamy layer. But this beer, it's got a good little bit of carbonation visible in it. I'm not sure how well you guys are going to see that. I think you can see some of it there, but the reflection of the camera is coming off the glass there. But yeah, a fair little bit of visible carbonation in this one, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, the colour of this beer, I would describe this as being a sort of light amber. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. You don't often have to care about that though when it comes to different kinds of IPAs. But yeah, when it comes to the West Coast IPA, one of the traits of these beers, I guess you like, or one of the kind of requirements, is that the majority of these beers' malt bases are made from barley malt. The New England IPAs, of course, have a little bit of, well, quite a bit of wheat and oat in them as well. It's not unheard of to use a little touch of wheat or oat in the West Coast IPA malt base. You know, Ballast Point Sculpin has a little bit of wheat in it, if I remember correctly, but yeah, for the most part these are barley malt based beers. But for me, the West Coast IPA can kind of lean two ways. It can be a little bit more kind of oily and caramelly, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo, or it can be a little bit more kind of bready and biscuity, such as the Russian River Pliny the Elder. Those are just my two kind of base points for the style, if you like. Judging by the colour of this one, I would say this one's a bit lighter and more likely to lean toward that more bready, biscuity end of the spectrum. You can see it has got a little touch of natural haze to it, but all in all, it's actually pretty clear, this one, rather than anything else. But yeah, like I said, a fair little bit of visible carbonation in this one. You can see the head has just kind of receded away a little bit, but all in all, it looks pretty nice actually. I do like how this one appears, and it's nothing surprising actually when you consider what style the beer is. This one looks pretty much what you would expect from certain West Coast IPAs. But yeah, the thing that's got me quite curious about this one is to see how bitter it's going to be, because these days, of course, a lot of people got into IPAs with the New England IPAs, which are hopped in a slightly different way, not quite as bitter, and you do get some West Coast IPAs that are like that as well, a little bit less bitter than the original ones were. So we'll need to see how that turns out. But nothing else to say about the appearance of this one or the technicalities of the beer for the moment. Let's go on and have a wee look at the aroma of the beer, because I'm very, very curious about this. Ooh, that smells really nice. Yeah, aroma wise, this beer, it's pretty kind of straight up, in honesty. Like, it is pretty old school. It feels a little bit far away, right enough, from the nose, so I'll just put a wee bit more in so I can get it a little bit closer. But yeah, all in all, it does smell really nice. So the Cascade hop, it's usually about 8% alpha acid. As I say, it originated in the Pacific, or it was created, if you like, in the Pacific Northwest of the US. And you know, it's been grown in New Zealand since then, obviously Australia and various other places now. And the hop will vary in its characteristics from place to place, because you've got different soil profiles, different water profiles, and that of course affects the chemistry of the hop. But yeah, for me, normally the Cascade gives you this sort of like sultana, peary type quality, and it gives you a bit of grapefruit and things like that as well, and sometimes a wee bit of like a plummy, yeah, kind of plummy note to it actually. So yeah, the aroma of this beer is really quite interesting, because when you sugar it up, you get more of the oily, fruity character out of the hop. But then underneath that, of course, you're getting all the maltiness and the green components and stuff too. So let's just try and break the aroma of this one down a wee bit then and see what it's all about. But quite a little bit of floral aromaticity sitting in the nose with this one, I would say too. It's really interesting smelling beer. But yeah, it's good. So the backbone of this beer, you do get that little bit of fresh white bready bread crust in there, which you very often get with these beers. There's a little tiny hint of wood, a wee bit of cracker, of course. I would say maybe a tiny little bit of like brown bread, but for the most part it's a white bready character that's coming out of the malty side of things. yeah. On top of that, it's yeah. On top of that, you start to get, there's a little bit of like a slightly toasty, brown sugary character to this one, so you get a wee bit of that toasty brown sugar in there. There is a little bit of like straight up sweet caramel in there as well, but quite a bit of like McVitie's digestive biscuit. I can't remember, I think you do get those in Australia if I remember right. It's been about 8 or 9 years since I was in Australia last time. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one is really, really nice actually. So yeah, for me, the malty base in this one, it is definitely a little bit more kind of bready and kind of biscuity rather than anything else, but yeah, you do get a wee bit of that straight up sweet caramel. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of Pilsner malt in this as well, because it does give you a wee bit of that dryness and almost bitiness further back on the nose. We'll be able to, pick that up in the actual flavour of the beer as well, but the malty character in this one actually comes across as being a little bit drier, especially the white bready notes. And as I say, that makes me suspect a little bit of Pilsner malt. But you do have to remember, with malts from different countries, they will have different characteristics, and I'm not overly familiar with Australian malts, of course. Like for example, German or Central European wheat is quite bitey, American wheat is quite smooth, European oats are a lot more creamy than North American oats, which are a little bit more kind of porridgey, and of course Australia's will produce its own malt, and that will be different too, New Zealand as well. So yeah, the malty character I'm getting out of this one seems a little bit drier to me in comparison with some other things that I've come across in recent times. So that's just a wee observation. But yeah, the fruity component of this beer is really nice too. That's lingering there, but the malty side of things is good. The yeasty side of this beer for me is is a little bit more kind of white bready, and it has a wee touch of like brown bread in the middle. So yeah, a bit of brown bread, a little bit of kind of white bready, crackery sort of note on the back of the nose there. Then it's all about the hops. So one thing to remember about IPAs is that you have 3 types of hoppings that you can do. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly bitterness and a deep dank sort of flavour and aroma. Then you've got the late addition hopping, which takes place usually within the last half hour of the wort boil. A little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour and aroma, and it's going to give you a very bright green component. Then you've got the dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, and that has that's got a really nice kind of very bright green component too as well. But yeah, that's all about flavour and aroma, of course. But yeah, West Coast IPAs tend to use all 3 types of hoppings. New England IPAs tend to use mainly late addition and dry hopping, which is why they are softer and brighter, and West Coast IPAs are a bit more kind of deep and dank in their hop character. Early addition hopping, of course, does dominate, but you can smell that in this one with the green component. So there's definitely, the green component for me, there's a little bit of earthiness to it, which is kind of interesting. I don't think that would be coming from the American Cascade, in honesty. I think it's more likely to come from the Aussie or the Kiwi one. I remember the Kiwi one having just a little bit more earthiness to it at one stage. But yeah, there's a little bit of earthiness in there, a very slight woodiness in the green component too, but the green component really leans toward like a nice kind of floral aromaticity, not spicy or anything like that, but then you've got the grassiness at the front of the nose too, which is quite wet and leafy almost. So the green component coming out of this beer, I think, is really, really nice. But yeah, fruity side of this beer too is really, really good. So yeah, there's a little bit of like there's a little bit of a kind of grapefruity note coming out of the beer. So yeah, a wee bit of grapefruit. You're getting that oily kind of like plummy sultana-y type thing that Cascade can very often give you. Yeah, so plums, sultanas, definitely the grapefruit in there, and a lot of oily pear for me actually. Yeah, the Cascade is just such a distinctive hop. As I say, Harvest and Schiehallion, a Czech Pilsner with hopped exclusive with American Cascade. That was one of my kind of go-tos in Scotland. And then yeah, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale has always been a kind of firm favourite of mine. So yeah, the way that this one kind of goes together in that sense, I think, is is very, very nice. It's a proper old school, quite nostalgic beer for me. This one doesn't do anything really surprising, but I think we'll get more surprises out of the flavour of this one. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we try this one then and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the Liquid Cascade, a 6.8% West Coast IPA from One Drop Brewing in Botany, Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Really curious about this. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Ooh, that's nice. That is really, really nice. First impression of this one is quite an oily and slick West Coast IPA. The most recent West Coast IPAs I've had have actually been from West Coast Brewing in Japan, in Shizuoka, and you know, this one kind of reminds me of those actually, although those were doubles. This is single. I'd be curious to see how these guys would do a double West Coast IPA, in fact. And in Hong Kong, I tend to buy the doubles just because it's the price of craft beer here makes it, you know, it makes more sense to buy the doubles, in all honesty. But yeah, this one is a really nice, just drinkable West Coast IPA. I think it's really, really nicely done. Yeah, it gives you everything you'd want from the style. It doesn't really do anything surprising, but it's just really nicely done. You can't really ask for much more than that these days, especially with however many beers and things there actually are on the market. But yeah, this is really pretty damn good. So let's just break this beer down then and describe it a bit more in depth. But definitely kind of nice, slick, oily, biscuity, bready kind of West Coast IPA, this one for sure. So let's start on the middle third of the palate, as we always do. So yeah, the backbone of the beer, there's that nice, fresh, white bready bread crust in there. So yeah, nice, fresh, white bready bread crust in the base. As you move further forward on that, you do get a little touch of woodiness on that middle third of your palate. Then there's a Jacob's cream crackery type character as well. So yeah, nice, fresh, white bready bread crust in there, a little bit of Jacob's cream, a little bit of woodiness, then a wee bit of Jacob's cream cracker, and then on top of that, you get a little bit more of a kind of wholemeal brown bready type character as well. So yeah, there's a wee bit of that going on. Wholemeal brown bready bread crust in there, a wee wholemeal brown bready character, but that's quite a thin layer. It's not too present on the middle third of your palate. But then above that, you get the white bready layer, which has a little bit of density to it, but it's also kind of lighter, airy, and more fluffy in a way. So yeah, definitely a little bit lighter, more airy and fluffy for sure. But then yeah, on top of that, you start to get more of on top of that, the white bready layer, you start to get the wee bits of brown sugar. So there's a little bit of like a toasty brown sugary note in there, which is quite nice. So yeah, a little bit of toasty brown sugar. And then in the centre of your palate, you get that kind of oily circle that you often get with the West Coast IPA. So you can feel that oily circle there, and that's like a kind of straight up caramel. That is, of course, the boozy side of the beer. And just on the extremities of that little circle, you start to get the McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of characters coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, toasty brown sugar, then the circle, oily caramel in the middle, and the wee bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit coming out of the rest of it. So yeah, that's the middle third of your palate in this one, which is really, really quite nice. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate then. So yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate. And do remember, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. And of course, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. Wee bit of brown bread in the base, the white bready character kind of in the middle, and then there's a wee bit of like a drier, more bitey white bready character above that. I am wondering if there's a little touch of Pilsner malt in here, because you do get that little bit of dry breadiness to the beer as well. So there's just a wee bit of distinctive, almost Pilsner malty character in there. But yeah, let's go to the back third of the palate then. So the base of that one, of course, is that white bready bread crust that we talked about earlier. You've got the Jacob's cream cracker sitting on top of that. Then yeah, you've got a layer of brown bready note in there, which is a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. Then the white bready layer is above that, and again that feels a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. And then you've got that wee bit of almost dry kind of Pilsner malty character sitting above that too, which is really quite nice. Then it's all about the yeasty side of things on then it's all about the yeasty side of things on top of that back 30 palate. So let's have a little look at the yeasty side of the beer. So yeah, the yeasty side of the beer then. At this core of the yeasty side of things, you've got a little bit more of that kind of wholemeal brown bready character in there, and it's quite a sweet, oily brown bready character. Then around the edge, you've got so you've got that more oily, sweet brown bready character in there. Then around the edge of that, you've got a little bit more of a kind of white bready note to it, which is great. And then yeah, the very edge of that yeasty character is a little bit more kind of bread crusty and things. So yeah, you've got the oily brown bread in the middle, the white bready character around the edge, and then yeah, a more kind of bread crusty note of it. But I think the yeasty character really leans toward a more sweet brown bready type flavour, which is interesting. But you do get a wee bit more brown bread and kind of brown sugary sweetness out of this beer into the aftertaste, but it is very, very nice. So thumbs up to One Drop. I'm guessing with all the different Cascade things that they've put in this one, this probably will be like a one-off brew, but if they can brew West Coast IPAs like this, it would be quite cool for them to have a kind of regular one and to play with this style a bit more, do some imperial doubles and things, and keep this sort of vibe to it. They would be very nice. But yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, the hoppy side of things then, green component. So yeah, back corners of the palate, there is a little touch of earthiness in there. And as you move further forward, it's a wee touch woody, but then as you come further forward along the sides of the palate, you can get a little bit of that almost kind of pine resiny character along the sides there, but then yeah, more kind of floral and aromatic as you reach the kind of front corners of the tongue. Then round the front curve of the palate, it's a wee bit lighter and more grassy, and there's a wee touch of zestiness to it as well, which I think is quite nice. So yeah, the way that goes together in this one, I think is nice. The green component kind of suits this one. You get more and more floral aromaticity out of it into the aftertaste. But yeah, let's have a wee look at the front third of your palate then, the fruity side of things, just to round off. So yeah, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get that little bit of bready build up in there. Brown bread in the base, kind of white bread on top, then a wee more kind of Pilsner malty character on top of that. But the base of that, the base of that front third of your palate, it's got some really nice, you've got a little bit of that kind of wholemeal brown bready bread crust in there. More of a brown bready bread crust actually. The Jacob's cream cracker, the brown bready layer, then the white bready layer, and then there is almost just a wee bit of a more kind of Pilsner malty character sitting on top of that. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at that fruity side of things then. So yeah, fruity side of this beer for me is at the back of that front third of your palate, you get the grapefruity notes, and yeah, that's one of the kind of distinctive things about Cascade, but it's not too like dominant in the flavour, if that makes sense. So yeah, you've got that wee bit of, you've definitely got that wee bit of kind of grapefruity punchiness to this beer. But then as you move further forward from that, you absolutely get a little bit of, how would we say, you absolutely get a little bit more of that kind of sultana, dry white green grapey oily sultana type thing that you expect to Cascade. There's a little bit of that dry plummy kind of character too, but then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's more like a kind of oily peary sort of note, I think. And Cascade's really interesting in that sense, because yeah, it gives you a wide variety of different things, but I find Cascade gets a wee bit sweeter into the aftertaste as well, and it mixes well with the sort of brown sugary vibes that the beer has. But yeah, the way this one goes together, I think, is really nice. And when I think about this one, it's definitely one of the more kind of oily and slick West Coast IPAs that I've had. Like, in terms of when I think about this, the ones at the more bready, biscuity end of the spectrum, it's definitely one of the more oily ones within that part of the spectrum too. But all in all, I think this beer works together, everything goes together really quite nicely. So yeah, the way that all of this one, the way that everything pieces together in this beer, I think is really, really nice. So yeah, this one gets a big thumbs up for me. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again, but I would be very curious for them to try like a West Coast IPA with the more modern hops and stuff like this, and just try to do like a really just beast West Coast IPA. That would be a really interesting project for these guys. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour profile of this one. Let's just round off with a look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, it's kind of mid-bodied, pushing toward the top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation has a little bit of a prickle to it in this one, and as I said, it's quite an oily, slick West Coast IPA. The malt base has a wee bit of dryness underneath, the smoothness in the middle, and the oily kind of sweetness on top. IBU count in this beer, I think this one's about maybe 60 or 70 IBUs. It's not going to blow the head off you, of course, in terms of its IBU count, but it certainly does have that wee bit more bitterness that you'd expect of. It's got that wee bit, that slightly more bitterness that you'd expect of the West Coast IPAs. But yeah, you've got that nice kind of oily, fruity character coming out of this one as well. Yeah, all in all, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really nice. So yeah, just take a little bit of time and ponder over this one, because it's really interesting beer, and it's quite cool to see all these kind of Cascade things coming out. I think maybe with these, the Australian and Kiwi Cascade, you're maybe getting a bit more of that kind of peary sultana type note out of it. So yeah, very, very interesting beer, this one. Absolutely worth trying, and cool to try my first West Coast IPA from Untappd Brewing as well, and cool to try something from the Liquid series. I think these beers are all like single hopped basically. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Liquid Cascade, a West Coast IPA at 6.8% ABV with a shitload of different versions of Cascade in it, and it turned out really nicely. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Untappd Brewing as well, and we will definitely return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until the next time, Slàinte, Skål, cheers. Check out my social media, check out their social media. Check out my friend Sam Smalley at Short and Stout Beer Reviews, and do try some really nice Aussie beers. Slàinte, Skål, cheers, catch you later.